Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody, depending on which part of the world you're in. And welcome to the first of two International Safety Award 2024 webinars, which will give you some guidance and advice on how to submit your applications. I'm going to give you a brief run through. I'm David Roberts, the Awards and Events Manager, and I'm joined by Christine Cadman, who is one of our senior adjudicators, and Neil Stone, who is our chief adjudicator, who will endeavour to give you some guidance on how to submit your applications. There have been some changes since last year, which we need to make you aware of, and give you some advice on how to fine-tune the way you submit your applications. I'd also like to pay tribute to my support team members here, Natalie Neild and Susanna Castoldi, who will be facilitating this event today. So without further ado, what I'll do is first of all outline some of the timelines, the due dates that we have to adhere to in order to make the submissions. And then I'll go through some of the awards that we have and the free to enter awards categories, just so you know all of the different things that you can apply for. I'll then hand over to Chris and Neil, who will run through some more detailed information about your submissions and applications. But here you can see some key dates. So first one obviously is the early bird pricing deadline. So that's the 3rd of November, a very imminent date. So if you haven't already submitted your application, please do so to avoid the rate increase, which will come after the 3rd of November next week. The next one is obviously the second application webinar. It will be similar to this, not exactly the same, but similar, and that's on the 11th of January. And then we have the submission deadline on the 9th of February, the free to enter award submission deadline on the 1st of March. The results will then be made available on the 11th of March, and the winners list will be published on the 14th of March. If you want to inquire about your result, then there will be a deadline to do that the 22nd of March. And then the final pièce de résistance, the big finale, is the gala dinner itself, which is on the 7th of June 2024. It will be at the Intercontinental Hotel Park Lane. It will be a black tie event, similar to last year, but we're anticipating an uplift in numbers. Last year we had about 320 people attend. This year and next year we're expecting around 450 people to attend. So a much bigger event next year, hopefully, and we hope that you will be part of it. Next slide, please, Susanna. So here we have some information on some of the categories. We have sector awards. All of this is on the website, by the way, so if I skim through this quickly, don't worry, it's all available on the website. We have the Best in Country Award, we have the Best in Company Award, and we have the Chief Adjudicators Award. As I say, please feel free to have a look on the website for this. There's extensive information posted there. Next slide, please, Susanna. And then here we have the free to enter award categories. So these are the ones that anybody can enter without a financial involvement in the application. So we have the CEO Award, the Health, Safety and Wellbeing Ambassador of the Year Award, Team of the Year Award, the James Tye Award, Wellbeing Initiative Award, powered by Being Well Together, which is one of our British Safety Council initiatives, Health and Safety Transformation Award, which is sponsored by Kroner, one of our partners, and the Seize the Opportunity Award. Again, all of this is posted on our website, so please feel free to go to the BritSafe.org website and click on the awards button, and you'll see full details of what these awards entail. Next slide, please, Susanna. So now, without further ado, what I'm going to do is to hand over to Chris and Neil, and they will give you some much more granular, detailed information on how to make your submissions and top tips on how to do them. So without further ado, over to you, Chris and Neil. 'em. 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 'em.
Yeah, next slide, please. Okay, shall I do that quickly? So, welcome everybody. Wishing you the best of luck for ISA 2024. There will be the opportunity to come back with questions either during this webinar or afterwards, and we do our best to answer your questions and your queries. The word limit, 600 words per question. We do stick to that very tightly. Most applicants for ISA 2023, the vast majority of applicants actually stuck to the 600 words. Just be aware that if you really go past those 600 words, and some people did in a very big way, we just don't read those answers. Read the command words, read the evidence appendix. So in other words, just familiarize yourselves with the scheme provisions. Make sure that you stick to the rules and don't digress. And don't forget the bonus marks. There's 4 questions that have a bonus, one bonus mark each, and also you've got the additional marks for accreditation. They're very important and they can make a difference between a pass and a merit, or a merit and a distinction. So make sure you pick up your bonus marks. Next slide, please. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. The absolutely important aspect of this webinar is to look at this slide and actually understand what it's actually asking you to do. The command word is usually describe. So what we're asking there is to know what you're doing, why you are doing it, how you are doing it, and very importantly, describe the outcome of what you have done. And if that hasn't worked, well, then you would be going back into looking at what you've been doing. Next slide, please.
The first 2 questions, question 1 and 2, remain the same, and we've been asking these 2 questions as long as I can remember. My involvement with ISA goes back as far as 2008. They are what we call the scene setting questions. They don't attract marks, but they are so vitally important in information for those people who will be judging your particular application. We want to know what you're doing at your site. What you're actually doing, what you're working at, why you're working at it, what the objectives of the project or the site is, and importantly include the number of staff working at the site and what they are doing. As I said, it sets the scene. It really gives the adjudicators a very good feel of what your site is all about. Okay, and as I said, no marks, but it is so important that you do this properly. Next slide, please, Susanna. This question again doesn't attract any marks, but again, it sets the context for a whole number of the following questions. So what we're asking you to do is to identify your significant issues regarding occupational health hazards, occupational safety hazards, well-being concerns. Now remember that every question has a limit of 600 words. We're quite happy if you actually bulletize, if you put all your hazards and concerns down as bullet points. If it makes it easier for you, do it that way. And it is easier for the judges, you know, because they can see at a glance then what your hazards are and what your well-being concerns are. And don't forget, we return to this question and your hazards and your concerns throughout the whole question set. So yes, as I said, no marks, but get it right. Do get it right, because it's so important, because, you know, the judges, you know, like to have detailed information for those 2 questions. Next slide, please, Susanna.
Right, okay. Before I start to break down this question, I'd just like to say, please remember, we don't know you, we don't know your site. So to enable us to mark your response, please try to give as much relevant information as is possible. Don't give unnecessary detail. It just uses up your word limit. Remember the command word of description, which is to state and make clear. Please stick to the question. You will find the word effective and effectively spread throughout these questions. That is a really, really important word, because what that tells us is how well you do your risk assessments, your policies and your procedures. So please be aware that any control measure that you put in place, any training you must do, must be effective. So the first question, which is marked, question 3A, with reference to the hazards you have highlighted in your answer to question 2. As Neil explained in the previous slide, you've identified a number of hazards. What we're asking for here is actually one of those hazards which has the highest risk factor. So only one of those hazards, just one hazard, and then the rest of the question is based on that hazard. You need to describe how you determined the risk factor. In other words, how did you get to that level? What was it about that hazard that made you think that was the highest risk you had on your site? You then need to detail, remember this is describe, so you need to state and make clear. You need to detail the control measures that you've put in place to control the risk. Now, the question to ask there is, did it control the risk? Because what we want to know is how effective those control measures are. And that is really important. Please remember that word, effective. That will hopefully take you from low marks to top marks if you can put in exactly what the questions asked. Notice that we have changed the questions and they are sort of layered. So it asks you to state something, then describe something. Please follow those carefully. Okay, next slide, please. So this is where you get the additional mark. You need to provide evidence of how you control the risk that you've identified in question 3A. For example, it could be documentation or work plans detailing how you've eliminated the risk, or should we say, reduce the risk to as low as possible. It could be engineering or management controls you've introduced, or photographs of PPE to control the risk. Please remember that PPE is the last resort, so we were looking for a hierarchy of control measures. So yes, next slide, please. Oops. Sorry, I disappeared then. I do apologise for that. Right, so the next question, question 4A. Remember, please, this is also very important. This is for your site. Now, we are very aware that as an organisation, you will have health, safety and wellbeing policies that will be the same throughout the organisation. But what we need for this application is for you to actually describe the information actually at your site. So you will set out the organisation's key health, safety and well-being policies and procedures that you have in place. So what we're asking for there is, you know, a bit of a list of what you have in place. And then we want you to describe how you pass this information on to your staff. How do you communicate the policies and the procedures, and there's that word again, effectively to your staff? In other words, do they work? Did your communication work? Do people follow what you've asked them to do? Have you had any a reduction in accidents, for instance? That would be a pointer that your procedures are effective. Okay, next slide, please. And here you're having yet again evidence of 3 communication channels that are used to educate staff on site concerning your key safety and well-being policies and procedures. It could be photos of training activities, meeting notes, documentation containing details of training courses, certificates awarded, etc., etc. Thank you. Next slide, please.
Right. There's we have made a number of changes to the questions that we're set for 2024. Some of the ones that we've asked before, they've been revised. So just don't think, those of you who are applying for a second or third or fourth or even further time, don't think that the questions are identical. Look at them very, very closely. Concentrate on the questions this time round. Don't look back at what we've asked in previous years, because there's a danger that if you do that, you'll cut and paste and you'll miss vital points that you could pick up. So we tried to, I mean, we've spent an awful lot of time revising the questions and improving the the factors that determine whether or not you get 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 or no marks. So the descriptors that we're using are much more comprehensive than in previous years, and it is difficult. You know, it is difficult drawing a line between an answer that gets 3 marks or 4 marks or 4 marks and 5 marks. We want you all to do well. We all want you to get distinctions, but to get those distinctions, you've got consistently get 5 or 4 marks throughout. So you need to read the question, and you need to be aware this time round that a number of the questions have different parts too. So take question 5, this one, what we're asking for is for you to actually describe the arrangements you have in place for responding to accidents or incidents resulting in injury or health. So the arrangements that you have in place, okay, for responding. And then you, and we're talking about injury or ill health. Specifically, okay, there's got to be an injury or there's got to be an ill health occurrence, and you must have had them. You know, you don't have to look back over the last year. You might say, well, we haven't had one for 2 or 3 years. If that's the case, then use that as your example. Make sure that you identify not only the roles played by the first aiders or first responders, but who they are, okay, and the assistance they provide in the event of injury or ill health. And again, this is the question we're asking for examples of the measures you have in place to ensure that first aiders develop, maintain the knowledge and expertise that they need. So this is all about their competence, okay? And it is a complex question, and you've got to make sure that you answer all 3 parts. Okay, next question, please.
Right, okay. Yet another description required. So again, you need to state and make clear the arrangements that you have in place at your site for investigating accidents and incidents. Please remember also that an incident may not have an injury attached. It could be an incident that doesn't have an injury. So that would also be important. So if you have a very low accident rate, that you will still probably have incidents that need looking at and investigating. So what we're asking for here, you describe the arrangements and then you give absolute detail of one accident or indeed one incident that has taken place at your site in the past 3 years and the resulting remedial action. So in other words, what did you do? What did you do relating to that accident or incident, and what did you put in place to prevent future occurrences? Because that is what's really important. So in other words, and this word effective I'm going to bring in again. So how effective was your investigation, and did the remedial actions you took actually work? And that is really important. Next slide, please. So here we're asking for evidence again of the remedial. This is where you get your bonus marks, by the way. Provide evidence of the remedial action that has been taken. For example, there might be an action plan that's been put in place to implement the remedial actions, or there could be documentation. You might have revised your control measures. You might have revised your risk assessments. You might have revised your policies and your procedures. Remember, please, this is for your site. This will not be apparent in every single site. It won't be the same. You will have different control measures in place, and it's really important, please, for you to focus on your site. Thank you. Next slide, please, Anil. Thank you.
Okay, so as you gather, there is a significant change in the question. So we've got a question which is focusing on fire. We've also got a question, and we'll come back to another one, investigating on incidents or accidents. And we've also got another question relating to, sorry, first aid, and we got that one relating to fire. So we're trying to cover all of those situations, occurrences where there may be a threat of injury, ill health, or even fatality. And this one is a focus on fire. So again, similar to the question on first aid, we're asking you to identify the arrangements that you have in place for dealing with an emergency caused by fire or the threat of fire, identifying those members of staff with specific responsibilities in such an event, and the arrangements that you have for evacuating staff with disabilities. Okay, so this question's got at least 4 parts. 1, the emergency arrangements. 2, staff responsibilities. 3, the arrangements in place that you have for evacuating staff with disabilities. And 4thly, the action that you've taken to improve your emergency arrangements as a result of a mock drill. So we would expect to see in all applications that there has been a mock drill within the last 12 months. It might not be legislation that requires that, but good health and safety management stresses the importance of carrying out mock drills. And what we want to see coming out of a mock drill is any remedial action that you've identified and put in place to improve the emergency arrangements. Now, if it's all worked perfectly well, and everyone's evacuated when there's been a mock drill very, very speedily, and you know, there's no shortcomings, you can say that. You know, you can say that, but do not underestimate the importance of learning from what you've done and identifying any improvement actions that you have put in place. So where we say we also just above the marking criteria talk about examples of measures to assess effectiveness, including staff surveys, feedback, performance appraisals, and feedback from team meetings. Could be that after a mock drill, you've had a team meeting and you've asked the team members how the drill went and what they've got out of it. Don't overlook that as possible evidence for strengthening your answer to question 7. Next slide, please. Okay. Now, bear in mind that there's 2 questions that we have set this year, or for 2024, regarding specific responsibilities for health, safety, and well-being. This is the one that's directed at your leadership, your senior leadership team, your directors, your executive team members. And we want to know what we're actually saying is identify who they are, what their specific responsibilities are, and then we go on to ask in the second part, how do you ensure that they've got training and development to ensure going forward that they've got the skills and the expertise necessarily to carry out their roles effectively. So this is one part. So we're talking specifically about directors and the executive team, okay? At that level, the top level of your organization, that's who we're focusing on. And there's a separate question which we'll come to later for other members of your staff who've got health and safety responsibilities. Next slide, please. So again, we're looking for documentary supporting evidence, which might be documentary, photographic, or other evidence, and to attract that additional 1 mark. But that's really got to bring out very, very clearly that those documents, those photographs have got to really bring to life that it's about the training development. So it's not about showing us a picture of your chief executive sitting behind his desk. This is about documents and photographic or other evidence that actually bring to life what your directors and executive team members do to ensure that they've got the skills and the expertise to carry out their role and responsibility. Next slide, please.
Okay, so on your site, the staff that work at your site, has any one of those, if you could identify any one of those who's been instrumental in promoting greater awareness among the workforce of indeed the importance of protecting their own and others' health, safety and well-being? This is an identify, so we don't need you to give a lot of detail regarding that. We just need to know who this person is and what they have done to promote greater awareness amongst the workforce, because it's really important that all your staff obviously get involved in health and safety, and it's really important to actually identify these people. So what we're looking for, and this is where we need the information, where we need the description, that you need to give 2 examples of the activities that they have undertaken, and most importantly, how effective they were and the impact they have had. So have they had an impact on the staff? Have they had an impact on the business? Have they reduced accidents in some way or incidents in some way? Lots and lots of different sort of things you can add in there. But we're looking for examples of activities that they've done. So what did, maybe they go around with a checklist and do an audit or something, or an inspection, and go back and report to the, to the top team. I don't know. These are your sites, these are your examples, but we need to know the activities of that individual person who has been instrumental in promoting greater awareness. Thank you. Next slide, please.
Can I just say on question 9 that Chris has just spoken to, it doesn't have to be someone necessarily at the top of the organisation. Doesn't have to be a director, doesn't have to be a member of the executive team, doesn't have to be a senior manager. It could be anyone. There might be someone who works on the shop floor, who works on the tools, who does a fairly basic job, who is regarded by the people that they work with as an inspiration when it comes to health and safety. Some of the best examples of champions of health and safety that I've seen over all the years that I've worked in health and safety are people, they might be getting on the job, doing it quietly, but they give a guiding hand, they give a helping hand to their colleagues because they want to help play their part in keeping everyone safe. So think broadly about those, your examples. Doesn't necessarily have to be someone who's solely doing health and safety their job. They might, have a different job completely, but the way that they go about their work might be that they really take a great importance, attach a great importance to caring about the people that they work with and providing that helping hand. Sorry to butt in, Chris.
No, it's absolutely fine. Thank you.
Question 10. Right, so in question 2, you've identified, along with your occupational safety and occupational health hazards, you've identified your well-being and mental health concerns at your site. Now what we're asking you to do is to provide 3 examples of the measures that you put in place to address these issues. And again, as Chris has said earlier, it's about the effectiveness of these measures. So think what they are, think about what it is. It could be what, I'm not telling you what the answer is, but it could be that one of your examples when it comes to mental health and well-being is the fact that the workers at your site are working remotely, a long way from home, a long way from family, and that puts stress on them in terms of how they're doing the job and their worries and the concerns that they have. So think broadly, think broadly about the examples that you want to give, but remember, the better the examples in terms of what you've done to actually address those particular concerns, the more likely you are to be able to provide really strong evidence of the effectiveness of the measures that you've taken. And we know from previous years there's been some really good examples of what you're doing around mental health, workplace well-being. So think broadly, think expansively when it comes to question 10. Next slide, please.
So we looked at the slide before, looking at directors and the executive team. And this one needs you to identify members of staff who are below directors and the executive team. So any member of staff, anyone that works on the website, anyone that works on your site, and you need to identify those people. So we need you to, give the names of those people or the title of those people if they have a title. And then we need to also know what their specific health and safety responsibilities are. You need to detail how you ensure that they have the relevant competencies. So what we're looking at here is what training do they have? How do you identify the people that are needed? What level of information do they need to carry out their respective roles effectively? Again, we're using that word effectively. So good examples throughout to ensure that these people who have been given this task of responsibilities can actually be effective in their role. Thank you. Next slide, please.
Okay, so this is a question that you'll recognise from previous years. It's a very important question, given the nature of many of the applicant sites where subcontractors, contractors and subcontractors are used quite extensively. And we just want to know and be assured by applicants that what they're doing is ensuring that their contractors and subcontractors are following their health, safety and wellbeing policy systems and procedures. So the arrangements that you have in place, and it could be pre-contract, and it clearly will be not only pre-contract, but while they're actually working on site, and provide 3 examples detailing how these arrangements have operated effectively at your site. So it could be that you have, weekly reviews. It could be that one of the things that weekly reviews with your contractor management team. It could be that you ensure that the contractors' workers have their competence and skills reviewed regularly. So you'll get 3 examples. Think of 3 examples, but make sure that they provide the evidence to demonstrate to us, the judges, that your management of contractors is working effectively, and that they're adhering to your policy systems and procedures and performing and managing health and safety well. One of the things I would say before we just go on to a couple of other slides and take any of your questions is that, if you answer all of your questions or most of your questions really well and get 5 or 4 marks, don't fall down by having a couple of questions where your marks fall a lot lower than 5 or 4, even down to 2 or 1, where you fail to provide satisfactory answers. Because a couple of bad answers can really make the difference between a distinction and a merit, or a merit and a pass. So make sure that you're confident in all of your 12 answers and your supplementaries, because it is important. Don't have any weak answers, because a couple of weak answers really can make all the world of difference. Okay, next slide, please.
Okay, referring back then to the bonus marks that were mentioned. So for 3B, 4B, 6B, and 8B, you can actually get 1 mark for actually giving the evidence that is needed to support the 3A, 4A, 6A, and 8A questions. So the evidence appendix, the evidence must be relevant to the question subject matter. The evidence must be submitted in English or have been translated. Only 1 document of evidence can be uploaded for each Part B evidence-based question, a maximum of 10 pages. Now, what this means is that, yes, okay, we might have asked for 2 or 3 examples, but they must be within that maximum of 10 pages. So you can, yes, there can be 3 different pieces of evidence within the 10 pages. In the case of question 4B, the 3 examples are required to be in 1 document, as I've just explained. The date of the evidence attached must be clearly marked on the document. And of course, you can send a video in. But for video evidence, the relevant section must be identified. Example, what minute within the video is the information that we're looking for. Okay, thank you. Next slide, please.
Okay. Right, this is where we come to the additional marks, and this is for accreditation. Many of the organisations who have applied for ISO 2023, I'd say about 90% had successfully come through ISO 45001 certification. A number of the organisations had also subjected their health and safety management systems to audit by the British Safety Council. So there's these supplementary marks, and I'll explain in a minute what we think it all means in terms of what you're going to get. If you've done the British Safety Council 5-star audit within the eligibility period, and you've got 3 stars as an outcome, you get 1 mark. If you've done the British Safety Council 5-star audit and you've got 4 stars, you get 2 marks. However, if separately or additionally you've done ISO 45001, which is a current certification, we'll give you 2 marks for that. And if you've also successfully come through the 5-star audit with the British Safety Council, which I think everyone in the world of health and safety acknowledges is a far higher standard than 45001, you get 3 marks. So the maximum additional marks you can get from accreditation is if you've come through 5-star audit with 5 stars, and if you've got 45001, you can get an additional 5 marks. So what this means is that we've got 10 questions that attract up to 5 marks each. That's 50. You've got 4 bonus marks for the 4 questions that have got a supplementary, and there's an additional 5 marks that you could get for accreditation. So potentially the most marks that you can get is 59. Now, we don't know where the line's going to be drawn by the executive directors of British Safety Council yet. Depends on how many applications apply, and that's a decision that's made a little bit further down the track. Last year, if I remember rightly, and I'll be correct, do correct me if I'm wrong, to get a distinction you had to get 50 plus. In other words, that is going some. And there were, as you know, lots of organisations that got distinctions, but 50 plus, and it might be lower this time, it might be the same, it might be higher. That's for the directors of British Safety Council to determine. It's not for the judges to determine. And if you know, to get a merit, if I remember rightly, it was 40 plus. So, you know, it's so important, as I said earlier, to concentrate on providing the evidence so that the judges can give you the maximum marks and supplementary marks and accreditation marks, because it makes all the difference. Okay, Chris, did you want to add anything to that?
No, absolutely. I think you've said absolutely everything, and it is important, as you say, to get these extra marks. They do make a difference. They do make a difference. So yeah. Thank you.
And remember, we all want you to do well. We're not looking to knock you down. We're looking for you to do well. And there's some really impressive applications that we've seen in recent years. So, you know, this is a recognition of applicant organisations going that extra mile to ensure that people aren't injured or made ill at their workplaces, at their sites. So, you know, we do want you to do well. Don't be under any illusions other than we want you to do well, but you can only do well if you read all the advice and guidance and provide the evidence. Okay, so that's it from us.
Can I just add one more thing, just to reiterate the importance of the slide 9, the who, what, when, where, and how. If you follow, when you're doing your question, if you refer back to that all the time, and actually provide us with the who does it, what do they do, how do they do it, when do they do it, where do they do it, and the outcome of that, then you are going to, all being well, succeed. So yes, thank you for listening.
The word that we haven't used, it's one of my favourite words, is impact. We want to see the impact that you're having. It's all right to describe your policies, your procedures and your systems, but we want to know how it comes to life for people who are making it work, and the impact you're having through the measures that you're putting in place. Okay, so next slide, please. Right, we have time for questions if there are any questions. And if you haven't got a question now, but would like to ask one later, then you can come back to Natalie and Susanna, and we'll do our best to answer them, okay?
Yeah, I'll jump back in there, Neil and Chris. Thanks so much for that. That was very instructive, insightful. I hope helpful to everybody who's attended today, and there's been nearly 100 people attending this webinar. There have been a couple of questions in the background. Please feel free to submit further questions if you want to. But I'll just address, these have been addressed privately, but they probably apply to our entire audience. The first one was with regard to the pricing. Well, the pricing's on the website, but just for everybody who's attending today, the current pricing to apply for an ISO award is £399 for plus VAT for members, and £530 for non-members, and that's the early bird price. I did mention earlier on that the deadline is the 3rd of November for that, and there will be approximately a 10% increase on these prices after the 3rd of November. So if you haven't got your application in yet, please do so, because yeah, we wouldn't want you to pay extra. Another question was, obviously a lot of information has been imparted today by Neil and Chris. It's difficult to process it all, and you may wish to have a recap on it. Don't worry. All the slides and this entire webinar will be available on our YouTube channel, the britsafe.org YouTube channel, so you'll be at your leisure. You'll be able to go back through the whole presentation and pause it where you need to, and then forward to the bits that you need to actually pay attention to. We've got a couple of new questions coming in, so I'll field those for you now, Chris and Neil. Here's the first one. We are FSA and Sword of Honour in the year 22. Are we eligible within this period? And that's from San Prahala. I think the answer to that is yes.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not. This is not necessarily linked to the Sword of Honour. You're free to apply to it for an ISA, whether or not you have applied to the Sword of Honour. Correct?
Yeah.
If I'm wrong.
Yeah. No, you're correct. Yeah. I thought the question might be about their current ISO 45001 certificate, but no. Okay. No, ignore me.
That is all we have at this current.
David, can I just say one thing?
Sure.
One is I talk too much, and I'm conscious of the fact that people's time is very precious. Don't forget to look at the frequently asked questions on the BSc website. Really good and helpful. And even though the questions have changed, do look at the Chief Adjudicator's report from last year, because it helps to bring to life what answers get good marks, high marks, and what answers lack the evidence necessary to get a decent mark. So do make sure you read all the background information. And the other thing I'd say is, if you're completing the application form on your own, or there's just a couple of you within your site who are doing it, get someone else to stand back and have a look at it. Make sure that you review it before you press the button and send it off. It's so important, because it might be something that you think's okay, but one of your colleagues might say, yeah, we could do that a little bit differently. Don't be afraid to ask colleagues to check it for you. It's so important that you get it right, because once you press the button and send it, you know, it's in the system then. Make sure you put yourself in the best possible light, and don't be afraid to ask someone to have a look at it. If I was applying, I would get someone I work with to have a look at it. It's not cheating, it's just common sense. Chris?
Yeah, absolutely agree. It's absolutely vital that you do read all the questions first, and then go away and find all the evidence that you need to support those questions, and then get somebody else to verify it for you or with you. Maybe your manager or whoever, doesn't really matter. It isn't cheating, as Neil said. And once the application's in, it's in, and there's nothing you can do about it. So make sure it's absolutely spot on, and remember all the points that we've made to you, the who, what, when, where, why, and how. And if you do that, then hopefully you'll be successful. And I wish you well.
Me too.
Great. I have a very technical question, which I'm going to have to defer to your expertise on, Neil and Chris. It comes from Emma, and she says, we only have a team of 3 on our COMAH site, C-O-M-A-H. Is this too small a group to apply?
No. COMAH is control of major accident hazards. So it could be, I don't know, Emma, what you're doing. It could be a very small chemical site where you're storing chemicals. There's only 3 of you. No, it could be 3, it could be 30, it could be 300, it could be 3,000. Given the nature of a site that's a COMAH site, and you're dealing with major accident hazards, even though there's very few of you, you know, I guess you've got very sophisticated health and safety management systems in place. You know, this is not about the money, Emma. This is about the fact it's a small organisation. We want to see your application, and you know, my experience, and I'm sure Chris is that major accident hazard sites really have sophisticated systems. So the fact there's only 3 of you, don't worry. The judges would take that into account. Apply, please.
Well, Emma has actually fed back already, Neil and Chris, and said that's great, thank you. So you've comprehensively answered that question, so thank you so much for that. We don't actually have any further questions, but obviously if people do think of things subsequent to this webinar, then we're happy to answer questions via our awards@britsafe.org channel, and we will endeavour to answer those questions as soon as possible. We do have another question actually from San. San is asking, what if there are no incidents happened at the site in the last 3 years? And I think you did mention this already, Neil, if I'm not mistaken, but let's readdress that question.
I mean, Chris might have a different view, and we're not making this up as we go along. Yes, if there are no incidents or investigations, if you can give us an example of a near miss, that would be good. If you genuinely haven't, haven't had accidents or investigations, and you can't give an example of an accident or an incident, but we still need to know about your arrangements that you've got in place for investigating, should there be. So if there hasn't been one, don't make it up, obviously. If there's been a near miss, talk about that, whether or not that's a near miss that could have led to ill health, could have led to injury, could have led to first aider being required or an emergency evacuation. So if it hasn't happened, fine, but you must talk about the arrangements you've got in place should there be such an event or incident. Chris, is that okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. But I'm thinking if there's been nothing in the last 3 years, maybe then to just maybe highlight one that's happened in the past and just say, we've had none in the last 3 years. However, this was one that had occurred, an incident or an accident or whatever. This is what we did about it. And because of that, we have these things in place now. And therefore, we've got contingency plans and things just don't go wrong anymore, which is marvelous if that's the case.
And if you answer in that way, your question, so your marks aren't going to suffer accordingly. You're not going to lose marks. Okay, so don't worry. Don't think, well, that's a question where I can't get 4 or 5 marks because we haven't had an accident or incident. If you do what we say and that say, look, we haven't had one. However, the last one was X years ago, and these are our systems and our arrangements in place. Should there be one in the future, you're going to pick up high marks. Okay. That's good. I mean, it's good. It's good that you haven't had any. Well done.
Brilliant. Graham's asking, how can we get access to the question set? How and when can we get access? Well, it's all on the website, Graham, britsafe.org /rewards. Full details are there. John is asking a question, are any accident investigations that may be legally privileged confidential?
Listen. The applications that you put in are seen by the adjudicators, the chief adjudicator, and once the whole system's completed, that's it. They're never published. I can't answer for organisations in other countries, but I know as a fact that there are applications that we've received from organisations, and I can only talk about Great Britain. I can't talk about overseas, but this is I think applicable across the case. One of the problems that we've got in this country is that HSE, bless them, and remember I used to work for HSE for many years, so I'm proud of my association with HSE, but HSE take an awful long time to carry out investigations and determine whether or not they're going to prosecute an organisation where there's been an incident or an accident. It can take 2 years, it can take even longer. And we know of recent cases that have taken 6 or 7 years before they come to court. Yes, a lot of the discussions that will take place between an organisation and their lawyers will be legally privileged. You've really got to trust BSC as an organisation that if we're asking you to talk about the arrangements that you've got in place for dealing with a specific incident or accident, that is information that we have. we mark on the basis of our application, and once the process is finished, that is the end of it. We don't keep those documents. They're stored away. They are not accessible to anyone. The only thing that we make public, correct me if I'm wrong, is the names of the winners and losers when we publish the list of who's got distinction merit pass. And if anyone came to BSc and said, "Oh, we'd like to talk to you about company X, can you please send us a copy of the application?" The answer was no, we can't. They're confidential documents. However, there are certain rules that you must abide by in terms of being eligible to apply for award regarding if there has been a prosecution resulting in conviction or an improvement or enforcement notice served. So you have to trust us as an organisation. In all the years that I actually worked in BSc and all the time I've been involved in judging ISA applications, we've never broken that confidentiality, and you just have to trust us. But if you feel that this is too sensitive, given the possibility of a pending prosecution, then you've got to make a decision within your organisation whether or not you wish to leave that until such time as that incident investigation has been completed, the accident been completed, and any enforcement action that's going to be taken has been completed. But that's a judgment for you to make, but you've got to trust us in terms of confidentiality.
Absolutely, Neil, and John just has responded in the Q&A chat, saying that excellent answer, appreciated. So that's really put that one to bed for him. I should also point out as well that prior to any results being published, we also have a due diligence process, a kind of a vetting procedure, in which we kind of double check everybody who we are about to award. And we do extensive searches within the media and press and the industry press to make sure that that there are no incidents that have not been declared. So there is a double safety net, if you like. Aside from just the adjudication process, there's another process which double checks that everybody is correct in what they're asserting about their company. So just to let everybody know about that. I think that's everything for the time being. Again, we will be doing another one of these sessions in January. So if you feel that there's something that came up subsequent to this session and you want to ask another question, please feel free to attend in January. You can always email us at awards@britsafe.com if you have any questions relating to this as well. I think the final thing for me to do now is to, first of all, to thank Neil and Chris for their time and expertise today, as always, much appreciated. Big thanks to the rest of the events team here for putting this webinar on. And finally, just to say to everybody who's attended this webinar and who may view this webinar on the YouTube channel, good luck with your application. As Neil has emphasized and Chris has emphasized, we want you to do well. This is about celebrating excellence in health, safety and well-being. The more people that get awards, the better. It's well deserved, and you are champions of this industry. So we wish you well, and if we don't hear from you before, we'll maybe see you in January, and if not, we really hope to see you at the Black Tie Gala dinner at Park Lane Intercontinental in June next year. So thank you very much for attending, and we'll speak to you or see you soon. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye now.